Talk Sheet. Recorded live.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number, 740. My name is Eric Nilsson, and with me today I have my regular co-host, Bob Plankers. Today is September 24th, 2025. Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. If any of you are on, just a point to note, if any of you are watching the YouTube live stream, we're saving bandwidth by shutting our video off. So that's why it looks weird. It's intentional. Do not adjust your TV sets. But otherwise, I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing great. We just got back from the Explore on tour in London.
How was that?
It was great as far as I'm concerned, because there were 800 plus people. It was sold out. I think Germany is going to be sold out as well. And, it was busy. I mean, it wasn't a hotel, so it was kind of like 3 floors, and, they had session rooms further away than there were issues, because it's not like a big venue like Barcelona was, but it was crowded. The keynote was big. The same kind of content was available for everybody that went to the Explore on tour. So if you're thinking about an Explore on tour in Germany, France, Singapore, and the other ones, I forget the other two, it was a good experience, and everybody was serious. So I enjoyed being there, seeing things. We did the code labs, good times, and a lot of positive momentum around just customer engagement. So pretty interesting. Liked the format. Then we had the user con for London the next day. I think we had 400 people at that as well, which was so I had a good time. So like that, and those are ongoing. So pay attention. There's a lot going on. Corey Romero, how's it going with you?
Things are going great. Yeah, things are going well. Had a couple of webinars with the experts.
Bob, how's it going with you? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right.
Yep.
Maybe we can
go back to Corey. Corey, you were saying something. You had a couple of webinars.
Yeah, Eric, could you hear me?
I think we're losing Eric.
Yeah, I think we are.
Well, I'm losing Corey, one of the two. We're not getting his stream. So I'm getting Bob fine, but we don't get Corey.
I'm losing Eric's audio.
Yeah, well, I can hear you, Corey. Why don't you continue on with your update on the webinars?
Yeah. So we held a couple of webinars this week. Mondays was with the vExpert Pros, and brought up some really good topics. One of the conversations that came up was the inability to connect to Broadcom Site ID post the 90-day VCF 90-day install, right? And so I sent out mail to the vExperts explaining the process and how those who have their VCP certification can get past that. We do plan on rolling out some new code that will connect that Broadcom site IDs beyond the 90 days here shortly. So stay tuned for that. All details were in my email. And the other webinar we had was yesterday evening. We had one for APJ, and it was a Broadcom social media advocacy was the topic. Sent out the recording for that this morning. It was a really, really good meeting with Noel Greer and Broadcom social media advocacy and the experts.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds really cool. I'm really excited about getting the site IDs and all that stuff figured out for folks. There's a lot of folks that are waiting for that, including myself. Like I passed.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having my own lab. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking to quite a few pros yesterday. I wasn't aware that it was an issue. So a lot of the pros hadn't brought it up to me, or vExperts hasn't brought it up to myself or other people within Broadcom, because they had assumed that this was something that we were actively working on. But lo and behold, there's been a fix out there, but it just wasn't communicated to everyone. It was, but I think a lot of people just missed that part of the blog post and the emails that went out. But it's so the process works, and excited.
No, that'll be really cool. So
Yeah, absolutely.
another question: do you think we're ever going to get Eric back here?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if this is recording. If it's, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not an admin for this. So, hey, if you're listening, welcome. Sorry about the confusion, but Eric, are you there at all?
Yeah, hold on a minute, guys. We're fixing this.
Good punting here. All right, cool. Yeah, what else is new, Corey? How's the
lots of stuff. We're still working on the AI project. That's the AI ML project where we're working with vExperts to create content to teach some of these AI engines, these AI models about VMware. We're building it's called a source of truth, is what it's called, and that's the idea of building a lot of content that VMware has certified. And when I say VMware is certified, it means that there's a process that we do with these AI models that tells these models that, hey, this is VMware certified information.
Yeah,
go ahead and leverage this information to learn about VMware's products. So I talked to a lot of the vExpert pros about that yesterday. Had some really good conversations around that. Really looking forward to. There was an email I put out, so folks who are vExperts who aren't vExperts that want to work on this project with us, they can go fill that out. So I've got a blog post coming out in the next couple of weeks about that, where folks who are not in the vExpert program, don't have the award, can come and work with us in that project to earn the vExpert award, and that'll be a way to get them into the program. And it's a really cool and unique way that we're going to do it, because we're kind of guiding people on how to become a vExpert, right? Here's the topics to go talk about. Here's what we're looking for. So go do it, and then you become a vExpert, and then you stay in the program as long as you stay busy, and then we award you one free year after this project is done. So it's a really, really good way to bring people into the program.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I really like the idea. So the AI, the large language models, and that what they know about what they, authoritative sources are a real problem, as you're, as you know. And so the figuring out how to, and then participating in programs that, hey, we're the actual source of this stuff, and and even community contributions. There's a lot of blog posts that go above and beyond our documentation and things, and so being able to designate those as good things, I'm excited. I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to work with a lot of people to get this done. Exciting project. What's new on your end?
Oh, on my end, well, so security continues on. We've got some interesting stuff afoot in the next few weeks here, so people should keep their eyes open for things. On the security front, hey, I think you put out a call for security content as well, didn't you?
It wasn't content. It was So put out a call for folks to work with a part of the VCF team that is in charge of security and compliance, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Deviani and myself, actually.
Yeah.
And, I need to do some. I was approached by some of the security vExperts at Explorer, like, hey, when are we going to meet? And so I need to. That's on my radar here as well. But I don't know. Security is good. One thing I would mention, while we're waiting for Eric to come back, is if you're listening to this and you do follow the security guidance from ourselves or CIS or any of that around ESX, we just changed the recommendation for one of the parameters, syslog.global.log level. We always had it set for 15 years or whatever. Our recommendation was to set it from the default of error to info, basically to up the logging level there. And now with 8 and 9, you don't have to do that. There's audit logging. One of the things you got with the info level was you get some additional information out of the system that you could use for security stuff, logins and whatnot. But there's now an audit log subsystem, and so that's if you turn that on, you can leave that as error, and ESX is not so chatty anymore. I haven't updated the CIS benchmark guidance yet, but our own guidance has been updated for 8 and 9, And so if you're listening and this is your ears perk up at this sort of thing, you might want to take a look and see, it'll take a while. Information propagates through the ecosystem at different rates. And so,
I was just going to ask how folks find out, read more about this.
I'm going to do a blog post. So we've got a patch coming out for 9 soon here. I'm not going to say dates or whatever, but
sure.
And that's a good excuse to talk about the hardening guidance for 9 and that. And I'll mention it in there too. But otherwise, just kind of been socializing it. How do people find out about it? That's a really good question, and the one that I don't even have a good answer to sometimes. So I just put it out in the world here, and we'll just see. It'll just float around, and over time, people will figure it out. But
yeah.
But that's good, and a lot of interesting security stuff. A lot of questions about Scattered Spider, that ransomware group that's going around, and people asking, are you guys doing anything to patch that? It's not really a patchable thing. Ransomware groups are the kind of thing that they'll use whatever's available to them to get you to pay. And so if you're not patched, if you've got if you've made some bad design decisions, if you're not doing multi-factor authentication, stuff like that, it's all stuff that you should think about doing and to harden your environment against this sort of thing. Scattered Spider, and I don't know who names these things. But they're just the latest one. There was another one like Fire Ant or something like that. That was and it's probably best that they don't let me name them, because who knows.
I wonder if it's similar to the naming of fires, or it goes to the first person that finds it. Right?
Oh yeah.
It identifies it similar to a fire, right?
Yeah, they get to name it.
Yeah.
Or we should switch to hurricanes and stuff like that, where there's just a set list. So, and we just work alphabetically through them. But I think, hey, Scattered Spider is better than Hello Kitty as far as
that's true. That's true.
But at any rate, we're getting a lot of questions about that all summer long here, and I just have an opportunity here to point out that it's just there's not one single thing you can defend against to prevent a group like that. Heck, they're even calling the help desks, and this is something that we saw. Basically, a threat group in 2023, the Las Vegas casino ransomware events kind of pioneered this, where they called the help desk and impersonated the Okta administrator and got the help desk to reset the guy's password. And that's trouble, because now these other groups are doing it too. They all learn from each other, and that's one of the things that actually at VMware products, and that we try not to teach the bad guys anything when we're releasing security advisories, and so we end up having to be careful about what we say. But the ransomware groups teach each other stuff all the time too, and so so they taught them that, hey, you can call the help desk and get them to reset an administrator's password, or they're doing it the other way too. They're impersonating the help desk and saying, hey, why don't you download, this thing and run it, to users. So just a lot of nasty out there. Be careful. Trust no one. Old X-Files stuff. So hey, we got Eric back. Look at this.
Hey, look at that. We managed to get back on.
Nice.
Yeah, here we are.
There they are.
Look at that.
Wrecking crew.
And really quick,
we came on the podcast. Firewall still blocking us, so we had to come on a mobile phone. That's what we're doing now.
You're really choppy still.
Yeah.
So while they're still working on that, I was going to say, if you're looking for information, a good source is blogs.vmware.com.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Blogs.vmware.com has got a lot of stuff, and we've moved a lot of the other stuff over to the Cloud Foundation blog now too from here. So
and if you want to find the
Bob,
various
how do you
blogs,
sound now?
Oh, you're sounding better now.
Bob, can you hear us? Yeah, I was just curious.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Can you hear me?
We've always been able to hear you, but you guys could not hear us. So that's what was happening.
Yeah, Corey and I have just been having a chat here. It's all good.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Well, thanks for carrying that. I think we're all here now. So again, the show, we want to talk about VCF adoption, and we have Comdivision's CEO, Yves, and we also have Sasha here from Comdivision. Yves is CEO, Sasha is CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, and they've been running practices throughout Europe, bringing people on. We've talked to them regularly. They're community evangelists themselves. Right? They show up on video on streams. And so, Yves, thanks for being here. It's always good to have you here. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we're on the Broadcom campus, and that's always challenging when you're trying to live stream, as I'm sure you're aware. Right?
I'm fully aware. I tried to live stream from here myself, and besides the security impact of that, it's also is like finding a network spot can be challenging down here. But I think it's always good to be here.
Yeah, we did file tickets to enable it, and they did get enabled for about a week before somebody reverted all back to blocking ports again. So
The network.
the good news is Broadcom has decided to use our tool. So they will eventually, we'll get the firewall set up, and then we'll be able to be on campus, which we are in campus right now. And you guys are in the US, you're mostly Europe, but you also do business in the US. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys do? Just give us a 3-minute elevator pitch of Comdivision, and now you're in the US as well.
Yeah, so Comdivision has been around since '96. We were one of the very, very early VMware partners. I think we did not start with Workstation. I personally started with Workstation, but we started with GSX Server, which is quite many years ago. And from there, we started off in Europe. Actually, we have been in the US since 2013, but within the US, we have primarily focused on helping vendors like VMware and being more like a shadow company to help other partners. And yeah, we just opened up last week a new office in Dallas. So beside the office we have already in Florida, we now have one in Dallas. I will be next week again at the VMAC in Dallas at the UserCon as well. And I will speak also a bit about the night program and how that actually is not only important for partners, but also important for customers, why they should look for partners who actually have nights, and why this actually makes sense. And yeah, so those are the primary areas. Sasha is also taking care of our Middle East area. So we do not span the globe globally yet, but we are getting there. So, but yeah, and when we look at VCF, I think, and we had a lot of discussions in the last couple of days and last week with also with the VCF team here. And what's interesting, what everybody tells you around VCF 9, in comparison to customers are really looking to adopt it pretty quickly. I mean, it was just released this year, and typically within VMware, customers were not looking into getting things into production up until at least a year into the product. And now it's basically our phone is constantly ringing from people. It's like, hey, can we use this? So the first question is always can we start using this? We heard so much about it. We don't want to go from vSphere 7 over 8 over VCF 5.2 to 9. We directly want to go to 9. Is there a pathway and things like that? So there is a huge demand out there in the market because people finally also see the value in all the different products. Because with Visa and Integrated Operations Manager, the complexity is gone. That was what helped many companies, I think, for the last couple of years often back. And let's face it, it was a good business for us as a professional services company to try to make it possible for all these customers to utilize all of these products together. Now we need to find a different way on how to actually capitalize on it.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's just going to be many more, because many customers, which we speak to at least, are now making even the switch from just standard hypervisor plus maybe Ops Manager or hypervisor plus NSX. They are all looking all in, not necessarily the automation route, because that's a people process topic, but on all the other products, everybody's why should we worry about that? And people who have never thought about stretched clusters and stuff like that, all of the sudden, because they have all the latest and greatest, they can utilize that.
And I think they did spend a lot of time trying to pull the consoles together and make it all work together, install together, install. I think for me, always should I some and it was work to get it all installed, right? 9 SCG, all together.
It not only was not necessarily to get the first instance up, but then came the time where you actually wanted to upgrade something out of it, and you were running into scenarios like, okay, which component do I need to upgrade first? What are the dependencies to do that? I wrote the architect in 5 or 10 days to pick out the correct paths just for some of these products, and that is gone.
Same on replay. It become easier.
Yeah, I agree. So Bob, I'm just going to do a quick check. How's audio for you guys?
It gets choppy at times, but in general, it's been all right. As long as you
All
can,
right, great. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I wanted to make sure you were there because we were just going to continue on. And I hate when we record things and then 30 minutes into the whole dialogue, you find out that, the other person isn't even there anymore, right? Or we're not even streaming.
No, we can still hear you, and it's a good conversation, and I'm glad to hear the adoption is going well. The idea of we've got a screenshot here. The idea of a single product, especially with VCF 9 here, really acting like a single product and being integrated in such a way that's the way forward, and that's been the promise of VCF all along here, right? So it's good to see it happening.
Well, I know we've announced major wins in big enterprises, right? That's good. If you're a big enterprise and you're going to head this direction. But it is a shift for the partner ecosystem to try to figure out where they slot in now, right? And are you guys engaging with some of the partner ecosystems as well to figure out where people offer value, Dell and other people that are building systems, or is that,
Not necessarily with the OEMs. I think there is a huge shift currently in the partner ecosystem because Broadcom is finally enforcing more rules around the partners. It's the expectation is that the partner can not only sell a license. There is a much higher expectation. The partner should have the skill set from a professional services perspective to deliver the services. And this now is hard for some partners who have actually only done hypervisors in the past, for them actually getting now up to speed. But on the other side, I must also say they had 18 months of preparation time. Now, if you take into consideration how long the deal acquisition did take over, in general, it was even 2 or more years. And it was very clear that Broadcom would want to actually move, especially implementation services, out to the partners. And at the same point in time, they are expecting that the partners are training their people. So a lot of the noise we see out there at the moment is also about partners who actually didn't spend the dime on actually training their people. And there are multiple ways. It's like Broadcom is not enforcing like we did in the past. You need to attend center and do the exam.
Right.
All of that is fine now. And those were all the things which people complained about in the past. And so even now that is being removed, people are still complaining. So, and I said that in a, I'm expecting there's less customers. The reason for that is that some of these partners are just not training people. Is in the end a risk for the customers. It's like, I'm not saying that a certification makes you a better person from that perspective or a better implementer, but in the end, it is a proof point for the customers. If you are attending Explore on tour in London, in Paris, everywhere else, it's like, I just got my voucher code for Frankfurt. It's like, you have the exam for free. So I would argue is the amount of excuses for all of that should actually be over. And from a partner perspective, I can only say is like in the last 18 months, our business actually grew by 150% on the complete VMware area. And what I hear from other partners, it's a similar story. Those who are really engaged in it are really seeing a massive increase, not only in license revenue, but also in customer service. So it is attractive for partners. Partners can't make that work themselves. I would even say it's their own fault because now is the time to rise and shine because that's what's possible now.
Yeah, I have heard these rumors. I've heard the partners complain. I've heard, that it's getting tighter. But at the same time, I know we had thousands of partners that, right, we're just reselling, ESX licenses or vSphere standard licenses and just not participating. And now everybody has a chance to get certified, to come up to speed. And really, if you're going to deploy the STDC properly, you do need to spend time learning this stuff, right? It's, there is a lot to learn.
There is a lot to learn, but there is also a lot to win for the customers, because as we talk about the private data center storyline again, there are customers not only in Europe, but we see the same in Middle East. We see the same here in the US. There is a request from people to actually get their data center back on-prem. Because for many, it's not only about the whole data privacy scenario and everything else. It is actually a preparation for them to build private AI, because many of them start playing around with AI at the moment at the public clouds, but many of them also figure out how much it costs to run AI in the public cloud, let alone the whole privacy scenario. Because for an AI to be effective, it requires that you throw in all your company data, and in some cases, even your confidential data. And the big question everybody needs to ask themselves is like, do you really want to have an AWS, Google, Microsoft actually have all that data? Or do you want to keep it yourself? For that to make sense, you need to first actually get yourself back on track. And what many customers also figured out is like, the cloud is great. Public cloud is a great operation model if you have a highly flexible workload. But if you have a pretty constant workload of your ERP system, which more or less the whole year has more or less the same workload, then public cloud might actually not be the most cost-effective solution. And I mean, we are all not necessarily the youngest on this journey. It's like, we have seen in IT this come back and go all the time. It's like, originally we had mainframes, we had green screens, then green screens were connected over modems, then that turned back, then we had client server, and we moved back. It's always moving in circles, and this is nothing different now.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the as Hock-Tan says, the rush to cloud, right? CTOs that made that jump without actually looking at numbers, are now looking at numbers going, okay, maybe there's tuning that needs to be done. Some of it comes back on-prem. I don't see Exchange servers coming back on-prem anytime soon, right? Because you can move your Exchange server to Azure and it runs and they give you a good deal. But heavy workloads.
Well, yeah, but nobody
Right.
wants to run email at this point. But you're right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eric. Keep going.
Yeah, no, it's nice to hear your voice, and I think that, yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. I don't want to say it's a webam moment where everything went to, and then it all crashed and it's all coming back.
No.
But I think there's valuable
there's-
places. Yeah.
There's just some reality setting in here, to the points being made. That people are looking at the finances of this and looking at what the cloud, the promise of the cloud, the public cloud, and that, or what people were promised, and a lot of organizations just move stuff to the public cloud, but they didn't change the way they worked. And cloud, that adage that cloud is a mindset, not a location, that really comes back to haunt us here. And these organizations have realized that they've just increased their costs by a whole bunch. But for what? And for those static workloads that you're talking about.
I want to ask them. I want to ask specifically, and Sasha, you might be able to take this, or Yves. I've heard now that customers are coming back saying, you know what, we implemented it, we've gone down the journey, and we're actually saving money. Like this is actually a saving money
on the
to go
VCF
to
side.
VCF now, right? And I just wondering, we hear that, but that's because we hear what people want us to hear, right? And so, question for you guys is: Are you seeing those stories show up?
Absolutely. So we see a lot of customers who are telling us now, they coming back from the public clouds and say, hey, we're saving a lot of money, because in the first place, when we went to the cloud in the past, they told us only that's a price for a VM. Nobody told us that we have to pay for increased traffic, for so many different network components and so on. So that's a big point. But also a lot of customers told us, hey, we are much better in the pricing perspective now moving to VCF 9 from the used a lot of products in the VMware environment and not only vSphere. They also have a much better price now with VCF 9. And
Right.
with the announcement that AI is now included, that becomes on top of it, and I can run all my workloads, also AI workloads, in my private cloud. And especially that's more in Euro part with the sovereign cloud, for example, that I have my data secure in my own data center. Nobody have access to my data or my AI data, especially when I feed my AI. And that are some really, really important parts for the customer to think about.
It's also interesting when they explained in one of the keynotes, Bob, that AI models come up, run for a while, then go away, right? Or they come up for a run while, populate, then the level of GPU consumption is not constant. Like I don't know AI that well, but I know that, they talk about thousands of GPUs running constantly. And you just think that where would there be GPU sharing? But when you listen to how they describe private AI and the models and sharing the models across GPUs, or that different groups have different use cases for AI, either RAG augmentation using that GPU is not constant, then all of a sudden load sharing across models or in the enterprise starts to make sense, right? And we've been doing this for years.
But you can also share your GPUs in your own company. So with a different business unit, you can schedule times for GPU usage.
Yep. Sharing models, sharing GPU usage, right? It's like, okay, maybe this makes sense, especially when enterprises are still getting a handle on what AI really means to them.
Well, and it's
And
just
the other
such an unsettled area right now too. You've got two different. You've got people that are trying to build a business function out of this stuff, and so they need reliability and predictability. They need resource controls and constraints, but mostly to keep other things from interfering. And then at the same time, you've got a lot of research going on. There's all these new models. There's a lot of stuff going on there. How do you try those? How do you make them safe? How do you try them in a controlled environment, that sort of thing. And so I think we're positioning ourselves very well to be able to deal with both of these sides of things, from the production. Hey, I want to build a chatbot. I want to build something that knows a lot about my organization, and then also let the data scientists do their thing too. And so I think there's a lot of promise here. And the fact that it's built in right now, I've been joking a little bit that we've been trying for about 10 years to make GPU related workloads not be special, that they're just like everyone else as far as workloads go. They can move around, they can be recovered, and they can be operated on premises, and that's coming to fruition. I'm really happy with it.
So to switch gears from a VCF engagement perspective, maybe you can walk us through what do you guys do when you get a new customer that is starting down this journey from vSphere standard or some components to, like, what's that engagement, and how many people do you guys have that engage with a customer to take them on that journey?
So we take a bit of a different approach potentially than many others. So the first thing which we do in every engagement is we have any new prospect or customer sit down for half an hour to an hour at least with one of our architects to really analyze where they are and where they want to be. And by intent, we actually do not use just some electronic analysis tools, which some others is like, hey, throw this against your infrastructure and it will give us all the results, because that will give you the technical information, but not really what the customer is looking forward. And based on that, we have like a building block scenario where we can then actually define the individual components they have. And then from there, we normally go, and yes, it can depend on a per customer basis, but in an ideal scenario, then they would get a fixed fee engagement from us, because our argument is always that if we as the experts can't tell them what it's going to cost, how are they going to evaluate whatever other quote they get? And many of the customers out there tell us exactly the same story. They ran infrastructure projects. The quote initially was half of what they in the end spent, or even worse. And so we try to turn that around now by actually providing a clear guided fixed fee engagement, because let's face it, VCF makes that a bit easier now. And the next stage is then typically once we have the agreement, we go in, we help them scope the hardware if necessary, because we have currently a lot of customers who have delayed their vSphere 7 move to something. So it's very often it's like, hey, let's build in new hardware, which then makes the VCF switch easier, because then we can drop out in many cases any kind of legacy storage and replace it with vSAN, because that works for most customers. And we can build the base foundation for NSX. And that will make it easier. And then we can, in many cases, what we do is we just utilize HCX or vMotion to move the workloads over while they are running, because that is possible in most cases. And this is another great example on why a VCF is such a great opportunity for everybody, because in the past, the majority of partners never could utilize HCX because it was only included in NSX Enterprise or Enterprise Plus. No one had that. And we have all these great tools within VMware, which for many years were only there for a very, very precise group of customers. And now all of that is available more or less to everybody. And that makes many of these projects so easy. And so in some scenarios, within a matter of weeks, we get customers from vSphere Standard basically up to complete VCF 9, including utilizing Operations Manager, basic NSX, vSAN, and everything, because it is now an integrated solution. It makes it a lot easier. So if any of your suppliers tells you it's like, oh, this is going to be a multi-year project, then you better actually want to check that again, because there is no multi-year project necessary for that anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. And once you get there, I got to imagine you're pretty satisfied, right? Because the complexity has decreased, and your workloads are now there, and you're just kind of on the current stuff.
I see even something different. What we currently see is some of the customers who actually in the first emotional moment switched to some of the other vendors have actually kept some workloads on VMware. And what we see now more often is people actually contacting us and saying it's like, yeah, the grass is not really greener on the other side. What do we need to do to actually get back on track? Because they figure out it's like we need far more hardware, which is scary for them in the AI scenario, because they know they need more energy, more cooling and everything in the data center already. And if now the other hypervisor or the other platform is forcing them 30-40% more resources in the data center, and then in the end it's not cheaper anymore because you need to pay more licenses to them as well, then from that perspective it becomes more attractive to actually look back and say it's like, hey, can we renegotiate and actually come back on track? And that is what we see more and more often, is that people figure out this is just not working for them. And it really depends on some small customers. Some of these solutions might be perfect. But if you are depending, and if you were used to facts like, hey, I can just move a VM around between my data centers. I can, if a host fails, it automatically turns back on. It's like, for some customers, the feedback goes like they first had to go somewhere else to really figure out what they had with VMware, and actually then to figure out come back because they are losing out on so many things.
I've heard another kind of discussion around this. I heard this quite a lot at Explore and in London. People would tell me, well, we're doing this for 3 years. You know, we bought a license for 3 years but now we're in investigation mode where we're gonna have this fall off in 3 years. And I kind of go like, I don't think so. I think you took a 3-year deal to keep things lights on, and now you're learning. You're going to learn VCF. You're going to do this, and I think the cliff that people talk about, well, we only bought the 3-year extension so that we'd have runway to leave. I think that's the opposite.
There might be some, but reality is it's a bit like the whole story is like, we have all seen this with Microsoft over all these years. We have seen this with Oracle. It's like with over 20 years also partially in the database sector, how often I heard customers is like, yeah, we are just going to renew Oracle for another 3 years.
Yeah, that's it.
And in that time period, we are going to get off. And then they try to do that again and they figure out it's not that ideal. And you have the same on the Microsoft side. It's like, I remember short after the acquisition, which Broadcom made, and all the press media goes up. And I actually had people from Microsoft management reach out to me and ask us like, look, can you explain us what's going on? And I explained them more or less what's going on. And they said, it's like, yeah, but isn't that normal? We do that every couple of years. So why is everybody so upset? And I think It is new for in the VMware
The
field.
VMware hasn't done.
Yeah, VMware hasn't done that.
We tried in 2012 with memory core. What was it?
Yeah,
The memory
that-
tax,
Oh,
right? We
yeah,
tried.
VRAM
Right.
tax. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Which again, I think over there, one of the biggest mistake was actually the communication way, and not necessarily the concept itself could have made sense, because it was actually being used in the CSP area for many years, and now the CSPs have to pay by core, and they, for example, say it would make sense the other way around. But there is a demand for other vendors out there, clearly, and there is a demand for some people to actually leave. But there is also a huge amount of customers who actually say it's like none of them actually has all what we need, especially those who are in a more critical infrastructure scenario. You need high security, high availability, and all these features. It's like, yes, some of the other ones have some basic features, but it's not there. It's like, I always reminds me of, and this is a story I know Sasha has heard that often enough. It's like November 23, when the acquisition came through. At the same point in time, we were at reInvent in Vegas from AWS, and they more or less celebrated with 50,000 people that they just figured out how to do vMotion on an EC2 instance. But with a hell long list of limitations on when you can't use that. And we were sitting there, it's like, did they just celebrate something similar to vMotion? And I think this is the problem for many people. It's like everybody is so used to having all these features in the VMware stack that for some of them it's really necessary to leave the premise to actually figure out that it was actually much nicer on the other side. And let's face it, it's possible to communicate or to discuss about the pricing as well. It's like everybody is upset about list prices, but the point is no one pays in the end necessarily list prices on VCF, and no one pays list prices on a Windows 20.
Right. That's what I also heard back on the savings money. It's like, well, when we got into the negotiation deal of doing VCF as a contract, it was actually cheaper than we thought, because we did get a deal, right? They were able to negotiate, right?
That is one thing. And what I told all customers is like, please go back through all your invoices over all these years, because VMware also increased pricing every 1, 2, 3 years, and there was repackaging in different suites. And I know enough customers who were going crazy on all the different, and we had vCloud Suite, and then vCloud Suite became vRealize Suite, but it had only parts in it, and you needed to buy other products. It was confusing, like whatsoever. And in reality, there were also price increases. In Europe, they were, let's say, hidden by the term. It's like, oh, this is currency fluctuation. But it was more than that. It's like, and I had some customers which actually went through the numbers, and they said, it's like, yeah, in the past, VMware more or less increased every year 10%. So if now a customer sits in front of me and says, it's like, oh, VCF is 30% more than before, it's like, yeah, you get a hell lot more functionality now, and you are just actually paying the same as the 10% year over year increase you had before. So it's in many cases not that big of a deal. I know there are exceptions. I know there are corner case customers where they had a weird combination of licensed products which actually are in a bad situation, but it's really corner cases. And I've seen that on social media. I made several times the attempt, because I had that again and again under my posts, and people said, oh, it's so expensive. And I go, it's like, okay, let's put the quote up. It's like, you can blacklist your company name and everything else. Let's look at the quote. Let's look at the old pricing, and let's maybe figure out where you made a mistake or something went wrong. And up until today, 18 months later, I had not one person actually ever come up on the show and actually be willing to actually discuss that and showcase that. It's like, I have not seen the 800% price increase. I think some people don't even know what 800% price increase means.
So we're seeing momentum, we're seeing adoption, and Hawk said it in his earnings call. He's got 80-90% of the customers moving forward with VCF, and it's all about just helping them implement, which you guys are helping, and several of the other partners are helping. So that's all good. What's new or interesting in the market, right? AI, obviously. I'm going to ask you an AI question, which is a little bit different, right? Maybe I shouldn't ask this, but Bob, you can jump in later. AI, it's replacing workforce, right? Or supposedly. Now, it isn't really, right, yet. But do we see AI impacting IT administrators, architects that are working? And will this? What impact do you think this is going to have?
It's going to have an impact in every area where we have repetitive tasks. where you have something, if you have a, let's say, a service manual which you are working off, then there is a high chance that service manual can also be done by an AI agent. I would not necessarily say that we see this in the next couple of months in all areas, but I see this, for example, when I'm coding, and I'm coding in parallel with Visual Studio and Copilot. It's like, where it was 6 months ago, where it is now, it's sometimes I'm just dropping in the function name, and basically I get half a page of code already on what it thinks how I want to have this function built, and it actually adopts my style. So we see this, and the question everybody needs to ask themselves is my work a repetitive day-to-day task? Then you are high on the risk scenario. If your day-to-day task is far more complex, it might be a different story. But design architecture.
I have a follow-up question. This was go ahead. And
Additional to that, it's, for example, our support team is using the AI nearly every day. So there comes a new support case within PSOD, for example. They uploaded the screenshot of the PSOD in our chatbot, and they directly got, hey, that is a problem in this software version, is solved in this version, please update to that version. So it's very easy in the daily business to use AI. And then I think we need to learn to use AI.
Right. So I equate this back to the days of virtualization, right? Where we had X amount of CPU, right? And it costs, we had cost per CPU, and most of it was idle. I look at workforce, I say the same thing. Yeah, well, most of us are X productive, right? Virtualization came along and we got a 20-to-1 or 10-to-1, and the curve for compute purchasing probably went down, right? Because you got more, but then we consumed it over time. Right. And I look at AI and I look at AI being applied to human capital. Right. And I go, yeah, OK, you get X amount per employee. And when AI showed up, it made everybody, the curve shifted down. We shifted the productivity cost curve down. But over time, we consumed all compute. We just got more for the dollars. And I'm not sure that everybody's just going to get 20x more productive. And that will have an impact. But then we're going to consume it. We're going to consume it with more ideas, more content, more development. I'm not sure that this isn't just a reshift of the labor curve, and then it'll continue marching up.
But again, all of this is pretty normal in human mankind. If you go back in history, we had all of this. It's like before we had the ability to figure out how to create fire, we had to wait for a thunderstorm and hope that it hits a tree so that we get fire. And all of a sudden, we figured out how to do that by ourselves. We developed a steam machine, which actually then everybody said is like, oh, this is going to ruin thousands of jobs. And
Right.
we have been going through all of this. This is nothing new. This is just another scenario and another tool which we get. And there will be people who can adopt the tool, and there will be people who cannot adopt the tool. But it's the same as like we have self-driving cars, or we think we have self-driving cars. Still, most people drive themselves. It's not that easy. The point is, and we talk a lot about it from an admin perspective, I think it's more interesting even currently to see how AI is also being used on the, let's say, art scenario, because currently I'm working with an agency on some new projects from an art perspective. And the interesting piece is we do not actually have a graphics designer design pictures. They basically now design pictures for the mood board, which then the AI is going to use to actually, if I tell it, it's like, hey, I need a picture with a light bulb and an astronaut and this and that, and that should be in my style. We are working on a completely different scenario, and that changes things. And this applies to many other scenarios. And the more interesting thing, which I see on every conference when I'm holding talks around AI, the first thing is we can't use AI because it's 100% fail-proof. Where I always argue is like, okay, then I want to have your HR person, because if you can show me how I get 100% fail-proof employees, then I want to have them immediately.
Right.
The second part I say, and then it comes off, yeah, but it hallucinates and does all these things, where I say is like, if you take 20 consultants from one of the leading consulting companies in a room and actually don't prepare them with a topic, I can guarantee you that a good amount of them is going to hallucinate before it tells you that they have no clue what they are talking about. So it's not uncommon that we see this. From that perspective, AI is actually far more human than we think it is going to be. And it's in the end, we still are in the learning scenarios. We need to figure out how we are going to utilize it, where it makes sense, where it doesn't make sense. And like with any other technology, we need to be critical and actually look at it. The challenge, I think, is more for the younger generation, because for them, it's we all, I think, all in this roundtable is like, we are used to the fact we enter a search term on Google or Bing or something else, and we browse not only through the first page, but the second and third and fourth page, because we know the first one is polluted with search engine optimization and ads and all that thing, and we go further down the road. The problem is you have now this next generation, which actually does not utilize these search engines anymore. They directly go into ChatGPT or any of the other things, ask it, and they take the first response because, hey, this system should have actually done that, which is a high risk because people are not making their own mind up anymore. And it is also highly influential. It's like we don't want to start the whole discussion around which media is good or not or bad media. But again, this is a highly risk scenario where currently where you would expect normally that people build up their own mind. And I see there a much bigger risk at the moment is that we just blindly believe whatever AI tells us.
Bob, you've been quiet. I'll give you the floor. You got anything to add or ask?
It's hard to argue with these guys. It's just, I have these same ideas and these same thoughts. I do want to go back to the, I did have a thought earlier about the public cloud versus the private cloud sort of thing, where you were talking about the differences, the sort of grass always seems greener on the other side of the fence, or perhaps it's you don't know what you've got until it's gone sort of thing. But I think the public cloud comes down to the idea of they always espouse that you should write your apps for the public cloud. The applications have to take such responsibility for their own well-being, for their own availability and all that stuff. Whereas with the public or the private cloud side of things, vMotion, all that stuff is just handled for you. And so your app can be way less complicated. And I think it's kind of proving out that organizations really want the less complicated. Let the infrastructure deal with it, and their applications can be less complicated. But yeah, so I had that thought. And then as far as AI goes, I always liken AI to my kids. Basically, we've created a 10-year-old, and I think about some of the security things too, as we talk about public cloud and things, the MCP, the Model Context Protocol thoughts with AI, and the fact that there's zero security. We've now invented a protocol that for AI that has, after all of this time, all of these years and decades, learning that we need to integrate security into things, learning to try to teach ourselves to not trust so much. This AI stuff has got a lot of trust in it, and in both directions, as you point out. People trust it implicitly, and they probably shouldn't. And then the AI itself has no security, and these model context protocols, MCP servers, and that there's no. I don't know. I'm a little afraid of all of this stuff when we're barreling forward at such a rate here that I don't blame organizations when they want to bring things in-house and get it under control and put walls around it and stuff like that. And so, but yeah, hard to argue with you guys. I think you're all on the right track here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So coming up to the top of the hour, I don't know if we have hard stops or not, but I guess hardware. I'll turn. Any exciting stuff happening in hardware? I mean, I listened to Dell live stream this morning. They got hardware. Intel investment from the government in Intel chips. AMD. I like to come back to hardware every once in a while and just talk a little bit, just 5 minutes or 3 minutes on where's hardware going in all of this.
I think when you look at the hardware story at the moment is,
and NVIDIA purchasing in part of Intel,
Yeah, I mean, they more or less just bought Intel, but yeah, that's a different story. It's
right.
Combined with the government. But when you look at all of that, I think we we went overall the last 10 years, especially with virtualization, we went to a highly standardized hardware model. It's like the standard go-to model in every data center, 2-socket system, certain amount of memory, some with disks in it, some without disks. But it was more or less a commodity unit, which was everywhere the same. And again, we are moving in circles. So we are now coming back to more custom built hardware again, because all of a sudden people need to figure out, it's like, oh, we need to get these GPUs in, which actually give us cooling headaches. And we need to figure that one out. And then on top of that, we want to have NVMEs in there so that storage is near and available. So I think we are
High-speed memory for AI
Yeah.
computation. That shares between GPU and CPU, and that's interesting. Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I think we are now coming back to a time period where individual hardware configurations will become important again for those people who are using AI and things like that. And on the other side, we are going to see, and the talks I had in the last couple of days is, let's face it, how much market share VMware had. And to be realistic, there is a certain threat which Hock put out by pushing vSAN into every license now, is more and more customers are going to question if they need a legacy storage system anymore, if they still need a 3-tier storage layer for whatever reason. And I'm currently already, when you look a bit at the storage market, is you can see that they are desperately trying to come up with new models, new markets, new ways, because they will see that customers are going to go away with it. It's the same like with Zoom and Teams. It's like, yeah, everybody agrees that Microsoft Teams is not power up with what Zoom can actually deliver. However, still a lot of companies are using it because it's included. And we will see the same with vSAN and everything else. Because you can use vSAN, and for more, I would say 80% of the customers, it's good enough. It actually will fulfill the requirements. There are some which need huge volume. Yes, you can build that with vSAN Max, but I'm questioning if that always makes sense then. And there are very, very specific, very high performance scenarios, which potentially you need something else. But the John Doe customer can do that. So the interesting piece on the hardware side is going to be, is like, let's look forward 5 or 10 years, is what's going to happen to all these storage vendors? Are they still all going to be around? Will we see another wave of consolidations on the storage field? Because the majority of workload, whether it's on VMware or any other hypervisor, by now is virtualized. Or it's running in Kubernetes and other scenarios, which then typically not always has a standard storage platform behind it. So that's, for me, beside what happens to the server at the moment, my personal point of view is more is like, what's going to happen to storage in the next couple of years?
That's an interesting one. Pure Storage was at the UserCon, the VMware UserCon. They had a booth there and it was busy. And I was talking to Brad Tompkins, who's the executive president for VMware. And he's like, yeah, but, vSAN's cutting into them, right? I said, wow, look at Pure Storage. They're busy. Everybody's over there. And he's like, yeah, but, they got the issue where what's good enough, right? And what do they sell now if it's good enough? So that's interesting. One last pivot, APJ, Asia Pacific. I don't know what even APJ stands for. Asia something Japan, right? Pacific Rim Japan. We had, I think, 1,500 people show up to the Explore on tour there. What do you guys think is driving that? Is it the Asia Pacific room is just growing and they're maturing now? What do you guys see? I know you're global, you do business there. What's your thoughts about APJ?
I mean, the question is, are we talking about the Mumbai event? I think that
this was Explore on Tour.
Yeah, Explore on Tour in Mumbai.
Mumbai. Sorry, I said mobile. What?
No,
Mumbai. Yes.
I think what you should not underestimate is when you look at, APJ is by itself, so that is typically more further off from Middle East. Mumbai has a lot of influence from Middle East because they can easily travel there. For them, going anywhere else is a bit more complicated. There is massive investments in AI in the Middle East going on at the moment, and we are talking about billions and trillions being thrown in data centers of the size of Manhattan, just to build AI capacity down there. And so clearly VMware plays a part in that game. And the other part is when you look further down the Asia Pacific route is they are also getting now into the, let's say, legacy workload scenario because they have to deal with what every other company has to deal with as well. Some of these companies were founded 5-10 years ago. They have some legacy ERP system. They are not going to just switch that. It's like we always talk about, it's like, oh yeah, you just make a cloud native app out of it. Have fun with it. That's not as easy as is. Otherwise, people would not constantly complain about why Windows 2003 or 2008 is end of life. And all of that is existing, and that's existing in APJ as well. So they have huge demand for that. And at the same point in time, we will see how these territories are actually developing, because at the moment it's interesting because everywhere else around the globe, everybody is kind of in shock mode and in all kinds of weird scenarios, whereas you don't hear much from Singapore or from China or anything else. It's like they just silently work their way, while we are actually all seemingly every week in panic mode for something new. And maybe there is something we overlook because they have growing economies like hell over there, because they are actually developing. And so from that perspective, I clearly understand that. But I would currently expect the majority of growth you see is primarily out of, or is big coming out of not only Middle East, China, India, and everybody else. Is like they're making so huge investments into AI, that this is going to heavily affect what's going to go on. It's like when you see that, if I take the UAE, we have an office there, is like starting this summer, it's every student in every class level. So from first grade to end of university has to have at least X amount of hours AI in the curriculum.
Interesting.
China has been doing that for the last 5 years already. So when we talk about globally that we need more data scientists and everything else, it's like we can have lengthy discussions, and don't want to open up the political door. It's like we can have lengthy discussions about visas and stuff like that. But the problem is all of these people have been trained and educated, but not in Europe, not in the US. They have all been trained and educated in Asia Pac. So no matter what's going to happen, we either actually have to move the work there or we have to move these people somewhere else. It's not going to be work otherwise, because we need thousands of them if we want to make AI work.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. So Bob, I'll let you get one more question if you have one. If not, we'll ask them what keeps them up at night and what they're excited about.
Yeah, I'm good. I appreciate you guys. You guys are true believers, and I like it. Well, you're not even true believers. You're very pragmatic, like about the whole thing, and I really appreciate that about you folks. And so, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we always wrap up with, what keeps you up at night and what excites you going forward. Let both of you take.
What keeps me up at night is like at the moment with all the global traveling and trying to get all of that done.
You don't know where night is?
No, that's not the problem. My problem is more, it's like, when am I going to be back home again and actually see the family again? That's what keeps me up, because I'm not worried at the moment about the whole VCF story, because we see increased business demands, whether it's professional services, licenses, all around the globe, wherever we work. So I'm not scared from that perspective. And so that's also what is the enthusiastic pace. Is like, as much as I'm traveling at the moment, I like it because there is so much coming ahead, and all the one-on-ones I have with Hock every couple of weeks, where we really talk about what's keeping us up, how can we move faster, how can we get customer. It's not about how can we quickly make money. It's all the discussions also I have with Hock is about how can we solve real life customer problems. And I think that's what actually keeps me more enthusiastic about, is seeing how Hock is actually after customers and really trying to figure out on how to solve customer problems.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's important from my perspective to show all the customers, all the users, what's possible now with VCF 9, with AI, with ops, with automation, and so on. And not only selling licenses or selling a product and say, hey, here it is, make whatever you want, or what you did in the past. Really selling a solution or showing the solution, showing what's possible and how to grow with this product. Also growing the company and the business, not only the IT perspective, how to grow the business with these products we have now with VCF 9.
Yeah, that is really what it's about. It's about, enabling customers to grow and accelerate growth, right? So, yeah, awesome. Well, thanks a lot for being here on campus. And sorry we didn't get video going. We're still working with IT on opening up ports, but we'll get that going any month now. And so thanks for coming here. Thanks for being on the show again, as usual. And hope that everybody goes and gets some bee barbecue and give us a like and a follow. And we'll be back again next week. Until then, have a great rest of your day.
See you.
See you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.